Welcome back, Truth Seekers, to episode 15 of The Deep Dive. You know, where we like to take a deep dive into the unexplained. And today, we have a real head-scratcher, a mystery so bizarre you'll be questioning everything you thought you knew about reality. Think like a mashup of the Bermuda Triangle, Area 51, and Lost City of Atlantis, but instead of being in some far-flung corner of the Earth, this one's hovering over the Indian Ocean.
Okay, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but maybe let's keep the hyperbole to a minimum. We're talking about a real tragedy here. The disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, 239 people vanished without a trace, leaving behind a mountain of unanswered questions, and years of searching haven't yielded the main wreckage.
Right. Of course, a tragedy, no doubt. But that doesn't make it any less mysterious, does it? So let's set the stage for our listeners. March 8th, 2014, a Boeing 777 takes off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, headed for Beijing, a routine flight full of hopes and dreams until it's not.
Yeah, the first 38 minutes of the flight were totally normal pilots chatting with air traffic control, everything by the book, cruising at altitude, just another day in the sky until suddenly it wasn't.
And then, what are they? It's some crazy turbulence inducted by aliens?
Oh.
Or maybe they stumbled upon a secret portal to another dimension?
Not quite at 1:19 a.m. local time. The captain radios in a seemingly routine Goodnight Malaysian 370, and that's the last anyone ever heard from MH370.
Chills, right? It's like they just poof, vanished into thin air. But planes don't just disappear. There has to be some kind of clue, something.
There is, and this is where things get really interesting. Just 2 minutes after that last transmission, the plane's transponder, the thing that tells air traffic control where the plane is, it just shuts off.
Wait, shuts off? You mean like intentionally, like someone flipped a switch? That's just way too convenient for a simple malfunction. It's like they want to disappear. Go incognito, pull a David Copperfield.
Well, hold on. There's another twist here. While civilian radar lost contact, Malaysian military radar was still picking up MH370 signal for a while. And what they saw was even weirder. Instead of continuing on its planned route, the plane makes a sharp left turn, essentially turning back and flying over the Malay Peninsula.
A rogue plane? Were they being chased by UFOs? Or maybe they just decided to make a pit stop, grab some street food in Penang,
Well, what's interesting is that this unexpected turn took MH370 near the captain's hometown, Penang, and for about an hour, military radar tracked the plane as it flew northwest toward the Andaman Sea. But get this, the flight path wasn't a straight line. There were changes in altitude course corrections. It's as if whoever was flying was trying to avoid detection.
Okay, now we're talking, this is like a real-life action movie, but with a lot less explosions and a lot more mystery. So they're dodging radar, making strange moves. Where did they end up? Did they just fly off the edge of the Earth? Did they find a secret island hideaway?
That's where the mystery gets even deeper, around 2:2 a.m. MH370 vanishes from military radar, gone without a trace. But there's one more piece of the puzzle, a real game changer, and that's satellite data.
All right, hit me with it. What's the deal with this satellite data?
A company called Inmarsat, they provide satellite communications. They were receiving automated handshakes from MH370, basically little pings from the plane's systems, and these signals continued for 6 hours after it disappeared from radar. That means MH370 was still flying somewhere long after everyone thought it was gone.
6 hours. That's enough time to fly across continents. So where in the world could they have gone in 6 hours? This is where my mind starts to wander to secret government bases, hidden bunkers.
Hold on there, conspiracy theorists. That's exactly what everyone was trying to figure out. And based on this Inmarsat data, investigators started to think that MH370 flew south over the vast Indian Ocean.
The Indian Ocean? Wait a minute, it's in the opposite direction of where it's supposed to be heading. Okay, now I'm really hooked. This is like one of those choose-your-own-adventure books. But instead of choosing a path, we're trying to piece together a real-life mystery. So what happened next? Did they find the plane spill the beans?
Well, what happened next was a massive search effort. One of the biggest and most expensive in aviation history. We're talking multiple countries. Cutting-edge technology, a search area bigger than India. They scoured the surface, went underwater with sonar and deep-sea drones. They really went all out.
So they pulled out all the stops, threw everything they had at it, hoping to find that needle in a haystack. And did they strike gold?
Unfortunately, no. Despite all that effort, the main wreckage site, they never found it.
Wait, so you're telling me they found nothing? Not a single scrap of metal, a seat cushion, a life vest?
Well, not exactly over the next few years. Pieces of debris started washing up on shores thousands of miles away. Reunion Island, Madagascar, Mozambique, even South Africa. and they were able to confirm it. These were pieces of MH370 carried by ocean currents, like little messages from the deep.
So like a message in a bottle, but instead of a love letter, it's a piece of a plane. It's both fascinating and eerie, but it still doesn't tell us what happened, right? Did it explode in midair? Did it make a controlled landing in the ocean? Did a giant squid pull it down?
It's a puzzle with missing pieces, and the most important piece, the black box, the flight recorder, it was never recovered, and without it, figuring out why MH370 went down is like trying to read a book with half the pages missing.
Okay, so I'm guessing with a mystery this big, there are tons of theories floating around, right? Each one crazier than the last.
Yeah, you bet. We're talking everything from pilot suicide to mechanical failure, hijacking, even a lithium battery fire. Get ready, because it's about to get wild.
Well, hold on. A lithium battery? You mean like the ones in our phones? Did someone forget to turn off their phone on airplane mode?
Well, it turns out the plane was carrying a shipment of lithium batteries, and those things can be a bit unpredictable. A fire could have knocked out the crew, but that wouldn't explain how the plane seemed to fly just fine for hours after it disappeared from radar.
Okay, now that's interesting. So we've got a mystery wrapped in an enigma, sprinkled with a dash of lithium ion. For good measure. This is starting to sound less like an accident and more like something deliberate. What about this pilot suicide theory? What's the evidence? Did he leave behind a note, a playlist titled Goodbye, Cruel World?
Well, investigators found a simulated flight path on his home flight simulator that looked a lot like the path MH370 actually took. It's a pretty big clue, but not definitive proof. There's no clear motive, no signs that he was planning this, nothing that screams suicide.
We're back to square one. A plane vanishes, we've got some interesting clues, a whole bunch of theories, and enough speculation to fill a swimming pool. It's like a real-life game of Clue, but without Colonel Mustard, and way more unsettling.
Not entirely. While we may never know exactly what happened or why there are still important things we can learn from this tragedy.
Okay, I'm listening. What can we possibly learn from a plane that seemingly vanished into thin air?
For one thing, MH370 showed us some weaknesses in how we track and secure airplanes. Remember that transponder that conveniently shut off? Well, it wasn't that hard to do.
You're telling me that a huge passenger plane could just drop off the radar if someone wanted to?
Yep.
That's a little scary to think about.
It is, and that's why the MH370 incident was a wake-up call. It made people realize we need to rethink how we track, monitor, and keep commercial flights safe. There have been calls for better tracking technology, more reliable communication protocols, even tamper-proof black boxes that could send data in real time.
So even though this mystery is still unsolved, it's actually pushed the aviation industry to make some positive changes. That's actually pretty incredible, like finding a silver lining in a very dark cloud.
Exactly. It shows that even in the face of tragedy, we can learn, adapt, and try to prevent similar things from happening again.
We've covered the timeline, the theories, the impact on aviation, but we still have that big question hanging over us. What really happened to MH370?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The truth is we may never have a definitive answer, and maybe that's okay. Sometimes the most important thing is to admit that we don't know everything. The MH370 case reminds us that some mysteries, even with all our technology and effort, may remain unsolved. It's a humbling thought, but it also shows us just how much we still don't understand about the world.
I'm getting the feeling you're about to say but, and it's a but. That leads us down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. Am I right?
You know me too. Well, there are a couple of intriguing theories we haven't talked about yet. Theories that involve espionage cover-ups, even the possibility of a completely different crash site.
Ooh, now you're speaking my language. Conspiracy theories, this is where things get really juicy.
Yeah.
Let's dive in, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, conspiracy theorists assemble. I'm ready to jump into the deep end of speculation. Give me the good stuff. What kind of top secret scenarios are we talking about here?
All right, let's start with one that's been bouncing around the internet for a while now, the Diego Garcia theory. Ever heard of that one?
Diego Garcia rings a bell. Is that like a secret island hideout, an underwater city? Spill the beans.
It's a remote island in the Indian Ocean, home to a big U.S. military base. And this theory suggests that MH370 was intentionally diverted and landed there. Maybe someone forced them. Maybe it was part of some secret mission.
Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. A secret military base, a missing plane. Yeah. It's like something out of a spy movie, pure James Bond, minus the fancy cocktails and tuxedos. So what's the motive? Were they trying to silence someone on board? Was it a top secret mission gone wrong?
The motives, like with most conspiracy theories, are anyone's guess. Some people say it was about sensitive cargo. Others say a passenger knew something they shouldn't have. It's a breeding ground for speculation, but hard evidence, not so much.
Right, so a secret island base, a missing plane, and a whole lot of unknowns. It's like one of those fill-in-the-blank stories. But instead of choosing between a talking animal and a magical object, we're dealing with international intrigue and the secret government stuff. But if they did land this plane on Diego Garcia, wouldn't someone have seen it? There has to be some kind of proof, right?
No, that's the problem with this theory. It's pretty unlikely that a Boeing 7777, a massive airplane, could just land on Diego Garcia without anyone noticing. The island is heavily monitored, and even if you could somehow sneak a plane that big past radar, where would you hide it? It's not exactly easy to make a 777 disappear.
Good point. You can't just park a 777 in a regular parking spot and expect no one to notice. But what about that debris we talked about earlier? Any chance some of it washed up near Diego Garcia?
Nope, not a single piece. And remember those ocean currents we mentioned, the debris that they did find all points to the southern Indian Ocean, not Diego Garcia.
Okay, so we can cross that theory off the list. It was a fun one while it lasted. What else is in our conspiracy theory toolbox?
How about a modern twist on the hijacking theory, but this time it's remote hijacking?
Remote hijacking, like hacking into the plane's systems from afar, is that even possible? It sounds like something out of a movie.
It's not completely out of the question. We live in a world where everything is connected and cyber attacks are getting more and more complex. It's not hard to imagine that someone somewhere could have the skills and the resources to take control of a plane remotely.
So you're saying some super hacker sitting in their basement wearing pajamas and drinking soda could have hijacked MH370?
It's possible, but there's zero evidence to suggest that it actually happened. And even if it were possible, why fly the plane for hours and then crash it into the ocean? It doesn't really add up, does it?
You're right. It seems like a lot of effort just to end up in the same place.
Yeah.
Unless maybe they wanted to make it look like a crash to cover their tracks, disappear without a trace, start a new life on a deserted island.
Look who's the conspiracy theorist. Now you're getting the hang of it. And that's the thing about these theories. They're all about speculation, filling in the blanks with whatever sounds good, even if there's no proof.
All right, we need to stick to the facts as much as we love a good conspiracy. But you have to admit, the lack of answers in the MH370 case just adds fuel to that conspiracy theory fire. It's a mystery, begging for an explanation. And sometimes those explanations get a little out there.
Absolutely. The unknown is a breeding ground for speculation, for creating stories that make us feel like we understand, even if those stories aren't true. It's human nature to try and make sense of things that don't make sense, to connect the dots, even if we have to draw in some of those dots ourselves.
All right, so we've looked at the facts. We've gone deep into conspiracy theories. Where does that leave us? What's your professional opinion after all the research, all the analysis? What do you think happened to MH370?
If I had a magic crystal ball, I'd tell you, but the truth is I don't know, and maybe that's okay. Sometimes the most important thing is to admit that we don't have all the answers. The MH370 case is a reminder that some mysteries, no matter how hard we try, might never be solved. It's a humbling thought, but it also reminds us how much there still is to discover about the world.
Well said. It's like you're saying, even in our world of technology and information, there are still things that we can't explain, things that make us question our place in the universe.
Exactly. And maybe there's something beautiful about that uncertainty. It reminds us that the world is a vast, complex, and often mysterious place. And sometimes the best lesson is just to accept the mystery.
Well, on that thought-provoking note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the mystery of MH370. We've explored the facts, the theories, the speculation, and hopefully we've left you with a sense of wonder and a healthy dose of curiosity.
I agree. The mystery of MH370 may never be fully solved, but it continues to fascinate us and remind us that the search for truth, even when it's difficult, is always worthwhile.
Thanks for joining us on this wild ride, listeners. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, sometimes the best answers are the ones we haven't found yet.